What is up, everybody? How's it going? You guys hear me all right? Let me know. Every time I do one of these where I'm switching from Twitch to YouTube to do one of these, I'm always afraid I got something screwed up. So let me know that you can hear me, please. Um, Hate them sleepless nights. I hardly ever sleep, man. My sleep is so bad. If sleep catches up with you when you get older, I'm gonna be screwed. What's up, Braden? Well, you guys, thank you very much for joining me. I see quite a few of you have shown up for this. So, as you know, sounds good. Right on. Yeah, Scott, no problem, man. Dude, I love doing this stuff. I really do. Have they released the schedule for next season? Yeah, Jordan, they release the schedule when they do the new build. So the schedule's up on the website. You can go download it. It's just a PDF. So, you're all screwed on 57. All right. So, anyways, obviously, I mean, just by the turnout, you guys, Big Block Modifieds has definitely already, kind of gotten off to a good start. I will be the first to admit I was pleasantly surprised. The first time I drove it, I was like, man, these things suck. Like, I did not like it. If you guys watched the review that I did on them, I didn't like it. The biggest reason I didn't like it was because the setup that was in the car, because I just used the Cedar Lake setup that iRacing had provided, sucked. It was horrible. And so I ended up doing a race that night in the fixed series that they're doing right now, that Muddy Mess or whatever the hell it is, at Limaland. And hey, I said it right that time. Hey, nice. All right, I've been working on that. So, anyways, and the setup was a lot better, felt a lot better, and it was a lot of fun to drive. And so I started tinkering with these things a whole lot more. And I actually got this schedule maybe in the forums too. Yeah, I think it is, Braden. I think the schedule is in the forums. So I've actually figured some stuff out with these things that'll help you guys, okay? The first thing you got to understand is these things, and I've heard this from people. I heard this from people who claim to have heard it from people that are supposed to be in the know, okay? So I have no idea how accurate it is. I know from driving it that what they told me seems to be pretty accurate. So what I was told was that the physics behind this thing is that they used the non-wing sprint car engine. And when I say engine, I'm talking about the game engine, what drives the physics of this, okay? So that's what I heard, was that they used the non-wing. I'm going to be honest, this actually feels better than the non-wing. This feels more like a non-wing should feel in terms of the way that it rolls over, the action in the chassis, the side bite that you feel. I'm kind of wishing they would take this and kind of maybe reintroduce this to the non-wing, maybe make the non-wing feel a little bit better. So that's the way they kind of feel to me. Now, along with that, though, there seems to be some UMP mod late model kind of thrown into it, all right, in terms of the way that they react with certain adjustments and things like that. So that definitely helped in kind of figuring some things out with these, all right. So the first thing that you got to understand is that in terms of like just one-to-one translation, right? Like, if because I had people being like, hey, can I use the late model setup matrix on this? You can try it, but there's no guarantees, right? Hey, can I use the UMP mod on this? Well, you can try it, but there's no guarantee. I've been going through and kind of using those matrices. Some things help, some things don't. Some things are a little bit more accurate than others. So that's kind of where this is at. It's kind of a tweener, all right? It's hard to explain. The new tire over to the other cars, they'll be amazing. Yeah, they really will, Braden. And that's the thing. That's really like the last thing that we've got in dirt is the tires. If we could get a better tire, it doesn't even have to be tire wear, just a better tire, one that rolls over, that really has the slip angle of a real tire, of a real dirt tire. Real dirt tires, if you were to look at one, right, the bottom, and then let's say here's where the tire, the bead is, right? If you were to look at it when you go into a corner, the way that they roll, that's called the slip angle, the way that they roll over, that's what gives you that side bite. Like in a sprint car, dude, we run like 6 pounds, 7 pounds on the right rear. You know what I mean? Like these maxing out tire pressures and stuff like that, like we do in iRacing, we wouldn't be doing that, especially on a slick track. So that's largely due to the fact that these tires don't have the slip angle that real tires do. Now, in iRacing's defense, yeah, and that makes a lot of sense with these cars. That's probably why they feel so much better, because if the big blocks are on the new tire, that would definitely explain a lot. Because these things have way more action to them. All right, and what I mean by action is you can feel that you feel a whole lot more in the wheel. All right, you can actually feel the action of the suspension and the way that it's gripping. These things, when you get them in and you get them set, right? If you're not careful, even on like a 10% track, if you start doing this with the wheel, you're just gonna, it's the car's gonna hook up and it's just gonna spin on you because of the action in the chassis. So they really did a good job with it. So with these cars, and okay, yes. So tire wear and a new tire are different things. I don't know if they'll ever have tire wear in dirt like they do on the asphalt side, but from what I heard, they've been working on new tires. So whether or not that's the case, I don't know. Now, also in regards to the manual that iRacing put out, I saw that manual and it's very cookie cutter. There's not much there that's going to help you. It's basically what this tells you, right? This stuff right here, like if you hover over it, that stuff on the bottom, it's basically that, but in a PDF form. That's really all that it is. Okay. Now, looking at these things, all right, and I'm fully admitted in the review video that I did on these cars, I didn't know anything about them. I'd never seen a big block mod. I'd never even heard of them until we got Weed Sport. Okay, these things were a complete mystery to me. I didn't know they existed. All right, so modifieds to me are what, you know, UMP, IMCA, like those are modifieds to me. Like that's what I grew up with, was in terms of a modified. This thing, it's like it's from another planet. Okay, so when I first saw these things and when I was trying to do some research on them, right, because trying to find stuff online about them, just trying to learn kind of the physics behind them, um, they used to be on bars. Now apparently that was a long time ago, but they're doing coilovers now. The really nice thing about that is the combinations that you have is pretty straightforward. You can only go on the spring rates 150 to 250. So it's not like the late models where you can go 150 to like 600, right? Where the spring packages are literally limitless. It's not like that with these. So that's a good thing. The other good thing is that they're pretty straightforward in the sense of how these things work. I find that hillbillying the springs, and excuse my slang, hillbillying means when you're running softer right side springs than left side springs, but in sprint car terms that would be reverse split, right? You got softer right side bars and left side bars. But I find that hillbillying the springs on both the front and the back seems to be really good with these cars. Now it depends on the situation, but that seems to be really good. And we'll get into this stuff individually here, and I'll show you guys kind of a baseline setup that I've been using to start with, and then different adjustments. So that's kind of the stuff where I'm at with it. Also, to note, this, before we go any further, this left rear spring perch, like, does nothing, okay? It does do adjustments, but, like, if you sat here and you just clicked it, right? You see, I mean, we're 881, 881, 881, 881, right? It's almost nothing. Now, over here, if I do just one click of this, right, that changed 5 pounds, moved the ride height, and changed our left rear bite. Jacking the spring perch offset on the left rear side is super fine tuning adjustment. Okay, so what I've been finding with these is, and like I said, we'll kind of go through everything here in just a few minutes. What I've been finding with these things is that when you get things kind of where you want, really this left rear corner is really good for fine tuning, like the ride height, fine tuning the left rear bite, things like that, okay? Now, really quick before we continue, because I'm getting hot already, instead of stripping off my sweatshirt, I'll just turn on a fan. That sounds smart. So, that's pretty much where we're at, all right? Now, real quick, I'm going to show you. Let's throw on the old, whoops, iRacing setup here. And you guys, I picked Charlotte because this is where these cars are at this week to start off. So, I picked Charlotte. We're also going to, one of the really cool things, my Motec workbook translated. I had to make some changes to it, but it was a lot easier than having to convert the initial ones and like the sprint car to the late model. So this thing does translate. We'll be taking a look at that here in this as well, so you guys can kind of see what these things do. All right, but hold on, I've got way too much stuff open right now. Let me kind of get some of this closed out here real quick. Alright. Let me check the questions real quick. Check the Bicknell Racing website. Some good info. Oh, 1-2 heights, weights for. Yeah, I've actually checked that. Pretty good stuff there. Do I think they'll add carts? I don't think they'll add carts. I don't. And if they were to add carts, I think that would be something on the road course side. I think they would actually add those maybe to the road course side before they brought those to dirt. That would be my guess. But who the hell am I? How do I even get that? It's not like iRacing talks to me. So I'm gonna turn on the telemetry real quick. I just got the track at like 20%. This is the Charlotte setting. Or Charlotte setup. And although you guys have been playing with these things, I'm not the best big block mod driver, so forgive me. Just trying to get some numbers here. If I can stay off the damn wall, I do that a lot in these things. I saw somebody say they dart around. These things have such a short wheelbase. They kind of remind me of like a big heavy go-kart. We'll just get this last lap in here and then we'll take a look at it. Alright. So let me load up the data that we just did, those 2 laps. Well, the last lap. We don't need to look at the numbers of me climbing up the wall there. Okay. All right. So these things are, as you can see, the stuff that we have right here. This is the iRacing setup, and I'm gonna close this out real quick. This is the iRacing setup. All right. And if we look at just the dynamic weights here and the damper velocities and stuff like that, just a couple simple things really quick. You can see on the front weights here, on the left front and the right front, they're basically even, right? 427, 425. If we look at the rears, left rear on average, 817, 998, okay? That's the average dynamic load per each corner of the car. Now, that's with the iRacing setup, okay? If we look at the setup, my baseline that I was running, and I don't need to do that because I've already got it loaded. If we look at my baseline, now you can see the weights very, very different, right? We had 257 on the left front, 483 on the right front, 803 on the left rear, 961 on the right rear, right? Just really, really different. If we overlay those, right? Pretty big difference in terms of the weight, okay? And that was just with a few adjustments. So these things, and from what I can tell by looking at the iRacing setups, the few that I've actually ran through here, is what they've done is they've given you really balanced setups, which isn't a bad thing, okay? That's not a bad thing. They've given you really balanced setups, okay? If we look at this, you can see They got a 250 spring on the left front with a 200 on the right front. They've literally got the shocks reversed, right? So they're freaking tying down the right front, easying up the left front. Then look at the rear shocks. They've got them about as stiff as you can possibly get them. Now these shocks go up to 10, unlike, you know, late models or sprint cars where the max is 9. Sprint cars only go to 9 on the rebound, but these ones go up to 10. So I don't know if these are different shocks too. I mean, I don't know if they just added extra valving. I don't know, but I do know that these things they've got them really stiff, okay? And that's how the car kind of feels on the back end. Is it kind of feels stiff, at least with this setup. All right. And then they don't run much left rear bite. They run the car, as you can see, pretty balanced. Okay. Now, here's the thing. And I actually downloaded this stuff so I could show you guys. Because like I said, I am not a big block guy. Where the hell is that thing? Why can't I find it? Nope, that's not it. God dang it. Hold on. I know it's somewhere. I just gotta find it. The hell is that website? Because they got a bunch of them up there. Big block modified setups. I'm trying to remember the name of that website that I found. Somebody had told me about it. One of you guys put it in the chat. It's not Troyer. What's... Yeah, Braden, you do. And this is going to drive me nuts that I cannot find this sheet because I had it. I don't know what happened to it. There was an actual sheet that I had downloaded. Now I can't find it. And I can't remember who was it. Up, there it is. Okay, I got it. So this was, and this is just an example that I found online. I actually think their website, they have like a bunch of them for all kinds of cars. But you can see if we look inside of here at the weights, and this is a Sportsman crate, so I don't know how much different this is. I can tell you right now, weight-wise, compared to the big blocks in the sim, it's a lot. But even when I was looking at all of the other ones, and there's a lot of them, the rear end was fairly balanced when it comes to the weight. All right, so at static, you would see about like this, about 20, maybe 30 pounds in terms of left rear bite. Now that's preloaded left rear bite. All right. On the ride heights, about 5 inches. Okay, you can see here frame height. Frame height is different than the way iRacing is showing it in there. I'll show you guys here in a minute. Same thing back here on the rear. So they don't run. You can see their frame heights in terms of their ride heights are pretty much even. It's not like we would do on like a sprint car where the corners are all different, or even on a late model, right? So when we're looking at this, if you're going to be looking at stuff like this and trying to convert it over, just understand that there's going to be differences in terms of what iRacing's telling you and what this thing is telling you, okay? And there's a bunch of these out there. Who is this? Bicknell. Bunch of them. Like, I mean, for every track in the Northeast, all of the types of cars that they run, there's a ton of them, okay? So if we think about it in terms of that, looking at the weights, right? They've got the pretty similar in terms of weight split compared to that setup that we just looked at, all right? This one over here had, what, 160 pound split on the front and then a 20 pound split on the rear. Here we've got, maybe a 70 pound or 170, I can't do math, 160 pounds split on the front, and, you know, 20 on the rear, right? So, I mean, they basically got it, okay? Like, that's what they're kind of going for. What I found with these, and this is a good thing, is that you don't get punished for deviating off of the left rear bite or something like that, right? So it's not like it's not like a sprint car where it's like, hey, if you qualify with the wing back, you're going to be slow. It's nothing like that. Like, you can run 19 pounds to the left rear, you can run 140 pounds to the left rear, and you're not going to lose time because of lack of traction or anything like that, okay? You're going to be just fine. It's all a matter of comfort, okay? So that's one of the biggest ones, was the weight that I figured out with these things. So when you are setting these things up, and until, you know, people have got stuff out there, you know, more setups and stuff like that, I can tell you guys right now, I'm going to put stuff out that will be free. I will not have insider level setups until at least season 2, okay? So, because I've had a lot of people asking, I won't have those out. I will be putting stuff out, though. I'm going to try to get one out at least each week in the actual big blocks. I'm not going to be doing the 358s, but the big blocks. And I'll be putting out a setup for the track that they're at. How good it will be, I don't know. You know, like I said, that's why I'm taking this season, to learn them. But that way you'll have a base to kind of work from, okay? So that's something that I figured out with that, was there's no differences. You're not losing traction. It's not costing you nothing. There's no exploit in the physics where it's like, hey, look, man, if you run more weight or on the left rear or you don't, you're screwed. It doesn't. There's no fall off, at least from everything that I can tell right now. All right, so that's the good thing, okay? Also, you guys are putting up a ton of questions. Hey, no problem, Nathan. Thank you. It's the best modifier. That's way outdated. Right side pan hardboard torque. Yeah, that is way outdated. The thing that I found though, and I cannot pronounce M. Stefhagen 86. I hope I say that right. The thing that I found though was that even with the coilover stuff that I've seen online, in terms of the weights, it's basically the same. So the way they do it is different, but in terms of the static weight and stuff like that, a lot of it was still the same. So that was why I showed you guys that. Because no, you're right, that is way out of date. Because when I saw this, I was like, how come these aren't on bars? Like I said, I didn't know anything about these. So, yeah, I thought the default at Cedar Lake was horrible, double clutch. But also, like I said, I don't drive these things. I'm very new to these. Okay, so, it was probably me. I'll be the first to tell you, it's probably my fault. Okay, I'm not gonna blame the setup. I just didn't like it. So, but now that I've kind of got a little bit figured out in terms of how to do this, I feel a lot better. Okay, now with the and I'm gonna bring up my baseline here. With this car, okay, I have found this to be a good spring and shock package in terms of the like a baseline. All right, and then for the tire pressures, these will go all the way up to 25. I've actually found with these cars that running maybe 12 at max is about okay. I'm going to be honest, I have not done a ton of slick track testing with these cars in terms of the tire pressures. I've tested slick track stuff for shocks and springs and stuff like that, but I haven't tested it in terms of the tire pressure. So I don't know how much of a difference the tire pressures are going to make, especially if these things are a new tire model. Okay, I don't know. What I do know is that 12 pounds seemed to be about the most that I would go on the tire pressures in the preliminary testing I've done. Okay, but this right here is a very good starting point for tire pressures on these cars I found. 12 on the right front, 10 on the left front. The front stagger, that is completely up to you, whether you want to do it or not. It basically, if you are somebody who's going to be using brake to turn the car, you might want to add some stagger. It does help the car from over rotating if you're going to be trying to rotate it with the brake. Keep in mind, you do have a brake pressure bias adjustment that can also help with that. So It's just up to you. It's really driver dependent. On the rear, 10 and 8 is what feels good. One thing to keep in mind, these cars do build pressure. The tires do build up air pressure. So if you're somebody who, if you're going to be doing like a 30 lap main, or, if you're in a league and they're running 40 lap mains or something like that, keep that in mind. You might want to start the pressures off a little bit lower and let them build up. They do build pretty quickly. It seems like, after a couple of laps, they've gone up about a pound, pound and a half, but they do build. How they're going to build over 30 or 40 laps, I don't know yet. Okay, I haven't done too many 30 or 40 lap races under telemetry, but they do build, and it is fairly consistent. All right. Stagger, once again, I have found this to really be driver dependent, whatever feels good to you. I've done some pretty small tracks in these things, just kind of testing them. I don't like a lot of stagger in them, to be honest with you. I think they go up to what, 6. I thought it was 7, 6. The most that I've gone is 4. Okay, so that was, what was that, Kokomo? Must have been Kokomo. So that's the most I've gone. I haven't done Fairbury yet. Okay, so I mean, maybe it'll be more at Fairbury. I haven't done, or I did Lima Land, but it was a fixed setup, so I didn't get to adjust it. But the 2 is just kind of where I start, because that's just where I start. It felt good as a starting point. On the springs, what I do with these is like I said, I hillbilly the front, and then in the rear I run about a 75-pound split is what felt good to me. I actually like this softer left rear spring, okay? But the one thing about it is that I don't have any adjustability in it. So what I've been trying to do is I've been trying to go up like this, doing 250 and 175 in the rear, just so I can drop that spring later if I need to. Okay, so that's one thing I've been doing. I always try to have some kind of adjustability in the car. But either one, whether you go 225 and 150 or 250 and 175, I find a 75-pound split to feel pretty good. All right. Like I said, there are not trying to fix that stuff right now, but excuse me. There are situations where reversing the split on the springs in the rear felt really good, but I wouldn't go a 75-pound split. Like it would be, we'd be going 175 on the right and 200 on the left, something like that, okay? And I'll show you guys some of the examples of this stuff on how to drive it. Cambers, you can just max them out if you want. I'm going to be honest. I've tried maxing them out. I've tried running them based on what I think the track should, how it should be on the track. I noticed very little difference, if any. What I will say is that cambers are one of those things that I try to run correctly. I try not to be super aggressive with them, because if the day does come that we do get tire wear, everybody who's running them crazy aggressive cambers, you're just going to be melting beads, right? Blowing tires out, or just wearing your tires out like crazy, because you got your right front laid out like this, because you found that to be the best way to corner. So I try to personally run them more realistically, but I found that if you want to just go to the max on them, it didn't seem to change a whole lot, at least for me. Okay. Casters, this is something that I was shocked by. These things love caster, like a lot of caster. Pretty much 10 or 11 in the right front is what I find to feel good. Also, I find a 3.5 to 4.5 degree split between right front and left front seems to be a pretty good starting point. Most of the time, and I'll tell people this, if you look at this, right, that's the steering axis. For those of you guys who don't know, that it's the caster is the actual axis of the steering, right? How much it's tilted forward and back. It's really a fine tuning thing, right? Like, it very rare. I mean, it's extremely rare, especially on dirt, where you're gonna be like, man, car's loose on entry, and then you're gonna be like, let's change the caster. Like, no, you're probably not gonna do that. So it's one of those things that I try to just set it and then really forget it. It's more of a setting to me than an adjustment. Like I said, I try to keep it at that split. When you do other adjustments, these will change, right? So if I change my spring here, the casters will change. I do try to keep them, in that range. I will reset them. So that's something to keep in mind. If you make a bunch of spring changes or, ride height changes, your casters and your cambers will change. So you want to make sure that you're always re-squaring that stuff, all right, on these cars. Let me bring this chat up in case I'm missing anything. Let's see. Where go? Let me see. Will you do a tutorial? I will actually, yes, I will be doing another painting tutorial. The reason, and Devin, this is staying up. It's staying up. It's going to be up forever. It is. So, I will be doing another one. The reason why is I actually just had a sponsor reach out to me last night. They want me to do a promotional video pushing their stuff. I had a good talk with them. And so I'm going to be doing a video for them because they do graphic stuff, numbers, graphics, stripes, things like that. And so I'm going to be doing another tutorial on it, really an in-depth, slow tutorial, like step by step, so everybody can see and there's no, me just kind of breezing through it. So I will be doing another one, Ian, because I've had a lot of people ask me about that. So you're not alone. A lot of people have gotten mixed up on that stuff because I kind of went through it pretty quick last time. So, anyways, I just wanted to check the. Okay, so that's the caster and cambers. The wheel spacing, you guys, this is pretty straightforward. If you follow the UMP modified setup matrix in terms of, and I've got mine here. I will actually, if you're not a part of the Discord server, which I'm sure most of you are, join it, okay? The matrices are in there. They're free. You can download them, okay? They're completely free. And you can keep them. And it'll tell you, like, if the car's loose or tight or whatever, here's the adjustments that you can make. These, the UMP mod one, when we look at wheel spacing, for, the right front, right rear, and left rear tires, the wheel spacing will work. These adjustments will work for the big block modified. Okay, and it's pretty simple. It's not like you really need that to know it, but it is pretty simple. If the car's, let's say it's tight, for example, you can move in the right front or move out the right rear. Okay, it's basic, just kind of geometry, I guess you would call it. I mean, if you have a right rear tire and a right front tire, if this right front tire is out further than the right rear, it's much harder for that right rear to get around it, right? Pretty simple. So if you move in the right front, now it's easier to get around it. Likewise, if you keep that right front there and then you move out the right rear, it's easier, right? So that's the wheel spacing. Pretty straightforward. One thing to keep in mind, though, is that these wheel spacings can go negative. Didn't know that was possible. I kind of stumbled across that on accident, and then I actually found a setup where you can do that. But you can go out to and into, okay? So you have 4 inches of adjustability there. What I found and like I said, I have not tested all of the tracks yet. I have not done all of the track states, okay? These are just the things that I figured out so far. What I have found is that on the bigger tracks, all right, having the right rear, kind of plus or minus a ½ inch to start with. Okay, we're not talking slick tracks, but to start with is kind of a base. Having the right rear plus or minus a ½ inch, and then really using the right front to adjust it seems to be a little bit better, because on the bigger tracks you're obviously trying to keep the car a little bit straighter. Yes, you're still getting sideways, but you're still keeping them more straight, and the right front really helps to do that. So I found kind of adjusting the right front helps with that on the bigger tracks. Now on the littler tracks, you can do obviously the right front or the right rear, and you can use the right rear on the bigger tracks too. But I just found it to be a little bit easier to kind of fine tune that rotation on entry. And just a side note, entry, these cars are like all the other cars. 90% is entry. Get the entry right, everything else will fall into place. It really will. That's what you want to be focusing on with these cars, is the entry. I will do videos on it in the future, how to get, how to rotate them and set them and all that stuff like that, like I did with all the other cars. But most of you guys who are here, you already know that because you've been driving them like crazy since they've come out. So that's why I wanted to do this setup thing, because I've had so many people ask. But that's what I found with the wheel spacing. Left side spacing, it's just basically the opposite. What iRacing says here is the truth. The left wheel outboard, which is a bigger number, or inboard, smaller number, if you move it out, the car is going to be freer on the left front. It's that same geometry thing that we just talked about, right? If you shift over, right, the wheel spacing on the front, or if you leave the right front here and you have the left front there, now that point, right, it's shifted, right? If you think about points, now you move this over, now it's easier to bring it all the way around. So it's just another way of doing it, okay? You can really fine tune a lot of your handling issues with just the wheel spacing. I found on these cars that doing the wheel spacing, like if you can get a good base setup, doing wheel spacing and make some shock adjustments, and your car will feel pretty damn good throughout the whole session. Now, keep in mind, I've been doing testing, like I said, it's minimal, not minimal, but I've been doing testing more for like what we would expect to see for an official session. So, 10% around qualifying, maybe 20, 25% in a heat race, and then like 50% in a feature, okay? You run this in a league and you've got, qualifying, 4 heat races, 3 consolations, and then a feature. How this is going to be on 100% track, you're probably going to have to make more adjustments than just maybe some shocks and some wheel spacing. But for the official stuff, that seems to be pretty good. If you can get this thing, if it rolls off the truck goods, you've got something to work with throughout the rest of the event without having to make wholesale changes. So that's a good thing with these cars. That was one thing I was really happy to see. Bring up the chat so I'm not losing track here. Well, thank you, Donald. I'm glad you feel that way. I try to do my best doing that. Okay, so, all right, so that's the wheel spacing. Next thing, spring rate. You guys, the spring rate principles for these cars are the same as they are on the UMPs or the late models. They really are. It's the same principles. You just don't have the range in terms of the stiffness. This spring rate package, like I just showed you, is a very good starting point, okay? If you look at iRacing's things here where it talks about the spring rate, the adjustment, stiffer springs, right? Always remember, stiff spring gets the weight in terms of, your static weight and stuff like that. Stiff spring gets the weight, okay? And then also in terms of your transitional weights, right? So we think a lot in terms of cross weights, and that's the way race cars work. There's also a lateral transition that happens. So not only when we look at these corner weights here, if we were to hit the gas, not only is part of this 472 going to go back here to this 787, but some of this 953 is going to go over here to the 787, right? It's not just the left front. You've also got left rear weight that's going to be shifting to the side. If we bring up Motec again, you can see that happens, right? So the left rear is getting weight from the front as you're hitting the throttle, but you've also got some of the left rear weight shifting to the right rear, okay? So the weight transfer, you got to think about it in terms, not just in cross, but also in side to side, because when you're going into a corner, right, the car's rolling. Even though these things don't roll up like on the bars like a late model does, they still roll, okay? And so That's the thing that you want to keep in mind is that when you're looking at, jacking a bunch of left rear weight, that left rear weight is going to shift to the right rear at the transitional phase. So there's a balance that you're trying to maintain, that you want to make sure that you have, in terms of not just, what that car's doing in terms of the weight when it's sitting there, but the dynamics of it, right? When that is in motion, okay? So your springs are going to help with that, all right? A good rule of thumb with these, and it seems to be, it's kind of the one that I use in the late models and the UMP mods, and it seems to work pretty well with these, is that softening up the springs by about, 25 pounds, right? So if this is what we start with for qualifying in the heat race, if I'm going to do a feature, if I go down to 225 and 150, like, we're good, right? Softening up about 25 pounds for a slick track seems to be pretty good, okay? Once again, as a starting point, all right? You guys, driving style is also going to affect how this is. Some of you might like a much softer right rear spring than others, okay? And we'll get into specific adjustments and what to do and things like that here in just a bit. I just kind of want to give an overview of everything. So that's the spring rate, all right? It's the same principle as the late models in terms of, if the car's pushing, one of the things that you can do is soften the right front spring. That'll help, all right? If the car's over rotating, right, you get it rolled over and it's wanting to over rotate, it could be because you've got too much right rear bite. You need a softer right rear spring, right? So those are typical things that happen with late models and UMPs that translate to these cars, all right? Now, the shocks, one of the things that I found, and I was actually really happy when I found this, and I will definitely give credit where credit is due, because I am, like I said, I was, these were very new to me. One of the things that I found, if I can find it, there we go, was this, and it's a couple years old, but it is a shock guide, the Bilstein shock guide, and they actually gave a shock setups, kind of starting points for the big block modifieds. Now, unfortunately, when you look at these numbers, you're like, damn, 162 and 55, we don't have that in iRacing, right? Well, I actually was able to translate those, if I can find it. Come on, where are you? Where are you at? I've converted those shocks, but I gotta find it. Where did it go? Ah, there it is. Shock conversion. Alright, so these are the conversion numbers for it. I've converted it to iRacing's. One thing you need to notice is that the Bilstein shocks are reverse. Okay? So when you're looking at this, the first number on Bilstein's is the rebound. It's not the bump. They're reverse. Okay? At least reverse to me. We always used like AFCO shocks, which were bump first and then rebound. These are rebound and then bump, okay? So what I did was I went through and I got all the numbers that they use, and then I converted that over to iRacing's labeling system, which is 2 through 9 on the rebound and 2 through 10 on the compression. And I went out and I tested it, and lo and behold, it works. Like, it's pretty accurate. It felt good. And so doing that brings us back to these right here. And if you're looking at this, basically what I got out of this was, the way that I kind of tested them and the way that they felt pretty good as a starting point is that this is a decent base setup. If you're on a tackier, fast track, like a momentum track, this right here. So I would use this on like a, maybe a Charlotte, a Knoxville, an Eldora, a Volusia when they're really, really fresh. Once it gets past, 20, 30%, it kind of gone. But in terms of where it's at exactly to this, but those bigger tracks. And then this was more of a slicker track and also short track. All right. And you guys, if you look this up online, you just Bilstein shock breakdown. I mean, that's just what it is. Bilstein shock, it's just like their catalog. Motorsports technical guide and price lists. I was actually pretty happy they got UMPs and stuff in here too. I'm gonna actually try these out on the other cars and see if they work. But which kind of makes me mad because I spent all this time trying to figure out new shock packages for the damn late models, and then I came across this yesterday. And I was like, really? Come on. How come I couldn't have found this before? But anyways, so these dirt modifieds, these actually do work pretty well as a decent starting spot. And these conversions right here. All right, this is the shock conversions that I used. If you guys want, you just copy this down. It's basically they go 162 to 300 on the rebound, which is just 2 to 9, and then 55 to 180 on the compression, which is 2 to 10. That's all I did. Just saying, when doing a setup, do you find your gear first or wait till the end? Red Wagon, I always make sure I've got the right gear in it first because your gear has a huge effect on the setup of the car. These things are no different. It's not like a sprint car where, like the 410s, it's like, oh, it's a half mile, 486, right? Like it's not like that. These things are actually pretty gear dependent. So if we, first of all, take the fuel out, you don't need that much fuel. Fuel on these things, which it looked like somebody was asking, fuel on these things is pretty good. It's not as good as the late models in terms of their fuel mileage, but it's pretty good. So if I actually bring up my RaceLab apps here, because this has got a fuel calculator on it, let's run a couple laps here and I'll show you. Okay. I want to say they're this one's like 0.2 or 0.3 or something like that per lap. See how that thing just slides up? That is one thing you're going to have to pay attention to. I noticed that if you change the weights on these things, you've got to compensate for it in some other spot. Also, the gear ratios on these things, or the RPMs on these things do not wind out like other cars. I think 8,000 is about the max. What I found for the gear ratio is that if you can get to 70, it's like 75 to 7,800, at the end of the straightaway, you're in a pretty good zone. So fuel at Charlotte right now, 0.3 is the max. And so that's 5 gallons. So 30 laps, we would be doing 10 gallons, right? I mean that's pretty much it. So and that's a big track, Charlotte. They remind me of, in terms of the fuel, like the super late models, around that range. Not exactly the same, but kind of around that range. I know that iRacing, I'll just say this again. What did they have for fuel here at Charlotte? They had 20 gallons. You need half that, right? I mean, unless they're going to be running 50 lap races in the officials, which I don't think so, you need half that fuel, right? If we look at this, I mean, it is 67 gallons. We don't need 20 gallons like that, or 67 laps. Like, that's a ton of fuel. So we don't need that much. But yeah, that's kind of where the fuel's at. But back to the shocks, like I was saying. So this shock package that's on here right now is actually based off of this one of these Bilstein ones, and I can't remember which one. I gotta bring up my little conversion thing here. Let me look real quick. So 230/72. which is a 208.72. It's a 5.4 208.72. Oh yeah, I think it's this one. Yeah, it's pretty much this. So this I've adjusted these shocks, but I started with it. This was a 5.4 on the right rear. The left rear was a same thing. Left rear was the same thing. Excuse me. Both of these were 5.4s. And then we had the up here 162.55, 162.55, which is a 2.2 or 2.3 or something like that. And all I did was I basically went through and started feeling out the car. You know, I had them like this. It was like 2.3 and 2.3. I just started driving the car and felt how the weight transfer was, and then just started adjusting the shocks. Like I said, in terms of the shock adjustments, they felt kind of similar to late model shock adjustments in terms of what I like the car to feel like. Okay, obviously it's not the same because these don't roll like a late model does, right? They don't roll nearly as much as the late models do, right? You're not completely dropping that right front, you know. First of all, you don't have a valence, but you're not dropping that into the ground, lifting the left rear corner up to the sky, getting it rolled over. You know what I mean? It's not nearly that extreme. But in terms of the shock adjustments, that's what felt pretty good. If you look at this, I'd take this and we'll go run this right now. You'll see, and what was it supposed to be, like a 10-pound split? So here, let's do that. I'll actually do that real quick. Or what was it? It was 20 pounds, right? 20 pounds was the split that they were running on the rear. Yeah, I think it was a 20-pound split on the rear. The front should be more even, but I'm not going to change that right now just because I don't want to. I don't want to take the time to do it. Also, I will telemetry this so you guys can see the differences. See, I always hit the wall, man, in these things. Being in the middle, I'm not used to being in the middle of a car like this. See that point right there? It's kind of hard to see with my steering, you know, to look down at my steering wheel. But when you get the car rolled over, right there, you can feel the car is set in the suspension. You can feel the suspension really set in these things, right there. You can actually feel it when it rolls over, and there's like a zone in your wheel that you'll feel where the car's like locked down. See how the car's just sliding up? It's getting no side bite. See how we're just sliding up. We're not going forward, we're sliding up. That's what I was talking about when I was talking about how we have to think about weight, not just in terms of cross, but as in side to side. That was the thing that I was talking about right there. That was why I had so much left rear bite in the car before, because I found that adding that left rear bite makes the car want to drive off better for my driving style. That's a big thing, you guys. It fits my driving style. You can be completely different, okay? So that's always something to keep in mind. Just know that if you are having that issue where you're like, dude, why is my car just sliding out to the wall and I'm not freaking going forward? Try adding some left rear bite and see if that doesn't help, because it can. So let's pull this up on Motec and you'll be able to see the difference now. And I want to get that fuel thing off real quick. Move that over there. Okay. All right, so we've got that one we'll compare it to that one. So you can see my baseline, which is the white lines, compared to what we just did right now, the differences with the left rear bite and then the shocks. Huge difference in terms of the dynamic weight shift. All right. Also, if we look at the velocities in the shocks, right, that one that I just did, see how much faster they're moving? Those things are jumping everywhere. So they're not nearly as locked down as they were before with that baseline setup, that other shock package that I had on there before I changed it. We can look here on the histogram, these white, see how much stiffer. The white was the initial one. The colored is the one that we just did. See how much stiffer that white one is in terms of low speed. And low speed is the when the suspension sets. So that's low. When you look at a shock histogram, you have low speed movement and high speed movement. Low speed is the setting of the suspension, right? The roll, pitch, and heave of a chassis based on, driving it, getting the car rotated and set, that type of thing. High speed is hitting bumps, me climbing up a wall, right? Like that's high speed. You can see here on the zero bin, which is this dotted line, and much stiffer in terms of the low speed movement. So that thing, I'd like the car to really get set and stay that way, right? So those differences just in the couple changes that I made, right? Left rear bite and some shocks, and huge change in terms of uh, the physics of the car. So the physics, they really got these things to feel, and to represent what's going on with them. All right. Doing a setup to find your. Oh, we already covered that. That race, the race app you were using. Yeah, Scott King. That's Race Lab apps. It's the free version. And tips. Use a close-up cam like that. I use a real. Oh, well, Alan, you're only seeing my center monitor. I have triple monitors. So for you guys, what you see, it's super close. But what I see is I've got the whole front of my car is like this. So that's why it's just on camera for you guys like that. You're going to have that base in the Discord. Yeah, Braden, I'm gonna do a base. Like I said, I'm going to be putting them out throughout the season. I will put this baseline that we've got here in this video, I'll put that in there just so you guys have it. But, I will have more fine-tuned ones throughout the season. How do you decide what gear change is needed through the night? Well, for me, when I'm doing testing, Motec is really good for this now. Is the I really watch the RPMs. Like I said, and if you looked at what iRacing said about these cars, and where is that thing? How did I misplace everything? I don't get it. I got too much crap, that's why. Anyways, the red line for these cars, I think, was 8,000 RPMs on the big block mods, is what iRacing said. 8,000. For me, there's always a 2 to 300 RPM jump if you rotate the car on the throttle. You'll always hear the wheels spin up. It's about 2 to 300 RPMs that spin up. So if I'm going into the corner and my high RPM here in Motec is around 8,300, I know that I'm getting right to that limiter in terms of, the red line of that motor, right? It's really only spinning up, not because the motor's spinning up more, but it's really spinning up more because the wheels are losing traction as I turn it in before I set the car. So there's a range that I've found on all cars. On the big block mods, I have found that range to be, this is actually a little high. That's also probably due more to my driving than the gear. But I found on these big block mods that it's like 75 to 7,800, maybe 8,000, in terms of getting to at the end of the straightaway. If you can do that, and I say that based on the tack that you would see inside the car, right? Because not all of you have Motec, and not all of you want to go down this rabbit hole. So Motec will show you what that tack doesn't show you, because this is showing you when the wheels spin up. on the tach in iRacing, it's going to show you what the motor is doing, right? Just that RPM on that engine, it's not going to account for that. And if it does, it happens so quick, you're not going to see it. So if you're getting to like 7,800, 8,000 by the end of the straightaway, according to your tach, like you're right there. And I found that to be about the range, 7,500 to 8,000 maybe, right around there. So that's what I try to shoot for at the beginning of the night when I'm qualifying in these cars. And then I will turn it down or go to a taller gear as the track slicks off. And basically what I'm looking for is to maintain that RPM accounting for the slick, right? Now it's a really fine line because you're not just going to run these things wide open as the track slicks off. You're not going to, okay? You've got to have throttle control. So I want to be able to have a taller gear to account for wheel spin, but when I'm going to be out of the throttle, I still need to have some bottom end to pull out of the corner. So I'll usually kind of, I usually try a 2 or 3 jump. And what I mean by that is let's say, for example, right now we're doing a race and I start with a 494 gear. And now it's time for the feature, right? And we've got a slick track. It's like 60%. If I'm going to change my gear, you can only go to a 486, right? I might go to a 486. Like if I'm like, dude, I'm going to go out, I'm going to run the top. Then I'll go to a 486. Or if I'm like, I kind of want to run both the top and the bottom, I'll do a 491. And then if I'm like, dude, I'm just going to sell out and run nothing but the bottom, I would keep it at a 494. So that's kind of my thought process with the gearing. Because like I said, you've got to account for that stuff. You're going to have more fuel at the beginning of the run, so the car is going to be more sluggish. Now that you will also burn off fuel, and as you're burning off the fuel, the track is going to get slicker. So, those are all things that you got to kind of think of as you're planning ahead, especially for a feature run, right? Because you want the car to work in terms of long term, right? You don't want it to be good for the first 5 laps, 10 laps, and then all of a sudden it falls off, because that's no fun. So that's the thought process with the gearing on these cars for me. That's my thought process for every car when it comes to the gear. Other questions real quick here before we do some more. Can you link that PDF to the big block mod setup and the small blocks are the same? I would say yes, you could use them. Because like I said, I'm going to be putting out big block mod setups throughout the season for free here on this YouTube channel. So make sure to subscribe if you're not subscribed. But I'm going to be putting them out, and so I would imagine that they'll translate. I did that when I was first building all the pro late model and super late model setups, is I would use the each one as a starting point. Now, normally if I took a pro late model setup and put it on the super late model, it's a good starting point, but there were changes that had to be made. You have to account for the gain or loss in power, and you have to account for the weight, right? A 360 wing setup and a 410 wing setup, no matter how good that setup is on the 360, if you put it on the 410, it might be good, it might be really good, but it's not going to maximize its potential because the cars are way lighter and they have way more power. You have to account for that, right? iRacing does make you account for that. They do have those differences in the sim. They've done a really good job with the physics, okay? So it's the same thing with here. Will it be a good starting point? Yes. Could you run it and do good? Yeah, more than likely. Absolutely can. Will it be at its best? Probably not. You'll probably need to make a few changes. Oh yeah, always run less fuel to qualify. Always. If we load this baseline back up here, we've got 5 gallons in it. All right. If I go out and I run a couple laps here, and I'll just run around the top. I'll just try to run a lap without hitting the friggin' wall. All right, so there's a lap. If we look at the lap time real quick. 16.5 was the lap. Okay. Now if we go iRacing's route, which is 20 gallons of fuel, because that's what they have in their base setup, which is 20. Which is insane. Maybe they do that because that's what gives the car traction in their setups. I don't know. I've actually seen people do that before in other setups. See how the car just slid out a little bit more? Yeah, I'm going to be honest with you. These cars, the weight of the fuel is not, you don't feel it like you feel it in a sprint car. The sprint cars are the worst. These cars, you don't feel that difference as much. Even like the late models or the UMP mods, you don't feel the difference as much. And you don't feel the difference as much with these neither. But there's still a difference in the weight of the car. If this thing's faster, I'm going to be pissed. Because that should not be. Yeah, we were almost 2/10 slower, right? Just with more fuel. So, you know, I would run less fuel. That's just the way that that's me. I do that in all the cars that I use. Yeah, with the sprint you can pick up a ton. I do the same thing in the late models and the UMP mods. I do it in all the cars. I run the least amount of fuel in qualifying. The minimum amount in the heat race, and then the minimum amount in the feature. And that's always worked well for me and everybody else who's done it. So that's what I do with these. I will say, if you forget though to take the fuel out, it's not. You might be a little bit slower, but you're not going to be like all over the place like you are in a sprint car, right? You got 24 gallons, you accidentally do like what I've done before, where I threw on my Knoxville feature setup on accident to qualify, and I'm like, dude, why am I sliding everywhere? And it's like, oh, well, I've got 24 gallons of fuel when I should have 3, right? Like, so you're not going to feel that kind of difference, but you'll definitely be slower. And the car does feel, you can feel that weight sloshing around in there somewhat. It's not as bad as the sprint cars, like I said, but you can feel it somewhat. Okay, so that's all of this stuff. The droop, you guys, that it's the same thing as the modifieds and the late models. All right, the droop chain is literally how high that it's the chain, how high that thing can roll over. I always run the droop for the most part. I usually start low and then work my way up. Okay. I haven't played with this a ton though on these cars. What I know is that 19.5, which is the most that it'll go, felt pretty good. I hadn't messed with it yet when I was first doing this baseline. It felt pretty good, and I tried the others. And I was like, well, those other ones feel good, but the car felt like it needed some changes. And so I just left it at 19.5. I was like, I'll just leave it. Screw it. I don't care. Because like I said, you guys, this is the first baseline. There's way more to come. So I just left it for now. On the chassis J-bar, now this J-bar, in terms of the numbers, is similar to the UMP mod, for those of you guys who've driven the UMP mod. So late models goes, I think it's 15 on the chassis side and 10 on the axle side. Those are the minimums. And for the most part, I almost always leave the axle at the minimum on the late models. These are like the UMP mods, where the minimum on the axle is 6 and the chassis side is 12. I find on these cars, it's pretty similar to the late models and the UMPs. About 6 inches of J-bar rake feels pretty good. You can take it out if you want, and it's pretty much the same with these as it is those cars. Meaning, the more rake you have, the more angle, the more the car is going to really rotate, on throttle. And then the less rake you have, the more the car is going to really power down. Okay, so that's the J bars. It's It's pretty straightforward. It's like the other ones. All right. The droop chain, we covered that. The trailing arms, once again, these are the same principles as the late models and the UMP mods. I find with these about 6 degrees of split feels pretty good. Now that doesn't mean you have to run 6 degrees of split. I try to have a starting point for the trailing arms and the J bar. I try to have a split number to where I can know, like, all right, when I'm building setups, okay, I'm going to put this on, I'm going to have this, and this. So that way I kind of know where everything is. That's just what I like to do. For the trailing arms, 6 degrees feels pretty good. It's, like I said, same principle. If you raise the right rear trailing arm, it's going to loosen the car up on entry and tighten it up on exit, just like these things say down here. I find that, and really, the rear trailing arms is where you get into the rear steer aspect of the car, and that's really important with these. These late models, modified, all of them. It's really important. It's really how you get these cars to be fast when the track is slick, is getting the rear end to really drive the car for you, where you're just kind of doing it with the throttle. These trailing arms play a big role in that. And so if you're having an issue with the car where it's literally one end is affecting the other, and what I mean by that is you're tight going in and loose coming off, or you're loose going in and tight coming off, these trailing arms are a good place to start, because usually you can adjust one of them and you're wiping out 2 problems with one adjustment, because these things affect both ends of the corner, the entry and the exit. All right. Left rear bite, we've pretty much covered that. Really, you can run basically like whatever you want on the left rear bite. I find that more bite feels better. If you want to run, negative bite, you can. I don't know if I would do that, but you can. So it's really up to you. The main thing is that you're doing it just with these rear ride heights. In terms of ride heights, that's another thing. In terms of ride heights, I find that the ride height, having the front around 5 inches, feels good. It seems to be a good starting point. I actually do try to keep them level. That's one of the things I did in the late models, and it feels good. And so I use that same principle here, and it feels good. So these obviously don't have the valence and stuff like that on the front. You don't really have to worry about these things bottoming out like a late model. So 5 inches felt really good, and I think that's actually close to the minimum on the front, at least the right front, if I remember correctly. Let me see here real quick. Whoops, wrong way. Yeah, you can't go below 5. So I usually will run them pretty low across the front. Just know when you start doing that, your rear weights are going to be all jacked up. So when I'm going to build the next setup here, getting this thing dialed in to be balanced from the get-go, so then I can build other stuff off it, is going to be a nightmare because of the way these things adjust. But just know that when you're adjusting these ride heights, if you want to lower the front end, do it in tandem. Go down 2 clicks on one side, up on the other, to get them leveled out. There we go. So now they're kind of level, right? You can see we have way too much left rear bite. That's okay. We'll just fix that over here. And then now I can drop my front end evenly, or kind of close to even, right? While still maintaining basically the same left rear bite, right? So that's kind of how you have to do it. Deck height, I will say this. I have more testing to do on it, and I need to create. I'm still working on creating new calculations, but in the preliminary testing that I have done, there is a lot of downforce to be had here. Okay. That being said, the downforce, from what I have found so far, is really more predicated on the front end being down and the air coming over and really being pulled through that car, as opposed to having the back end up. That doesn't seem to matter as much. The downforce really seems to come from getting the front down and getting it to just come over the car. So that's one thing that I have noticed with this, like with the late models and stuff like that. You know, they talk about getting the front down and the rear up and stuff like that. These, it doesn't really seem to matter as much. As long as you've got that front down and you don't have air going underneath, the car seems to get a good suck down. When I was looking at the stuff in Motec, and let me bring up my base real quick. You can see right here the vertical G-force, which is this purple line, right? That's the vertical amount that's being pressed down, okay? And we're averaging almost 1 G, which is pretty freaking good for these cars, compared to, you know, like a sprint car averages like 1.5, and you've got that big ass wing up top. So these things are generating a pretty decent amount of downforce in terms of the G forces around it. Now, like I said, I'm almost done with the new formulas and calculations that I've created for all of the dynamics that I'm going to be measuring in this stuff. And downforce is one of them. The formulas are super complicated. So I'm not fully there yet to measure it completely, but from what I have seen, it's far more important to get this nose planted, the front planted, than to really get the back end up. If you can get the air to really just go up over those sides, where it's just coming up over the sides, this back spoiler, whatever the hell this thing is it's gonna catch it. You're gonna get that press down. Let me bring up the questions, make sure I don't miss anything. Oh, thanks, Mark. I appreciate it, man. So, one of the things that I do, because yes, you were right, Grant, rear trailing arm split makes the car rotate better. You are absolutely correct. Okay? What I like to do is I like to run, that's why I said I like that 6-degree of split, and then I will actually vary my axle lead. Typically, my axle lead on cars, like if it's the late models or the UMPs, is positive, like 1/16. And then as the track slicks off, I'll max it out. I'll go to like 4/16. The reason why is I like the car to rotate, like rear steer, but I also want it to stay straighter, because as the night goes on, having to run the top and having to have your rear tire, you know, your ass end up on the cushion, right, kind of having to back it in, is really hard. I find it easier to get the car to rotate, but also maintain kind of a straighter angle to where I can almost drive around the top more like an asphalt car, as opposed to having to really rotate it and back it in. So that's why I do that positive axle lead. It's to compensate for that, to get the car to where it's still rotating, but it's maintaining a straighter angle, so that way I can really just get the right sides up on the cushion when we're right next to the wall. I don't have to worry about the back end smacking it as much, because I'm going straighter around the top. So that's why I do that. Typically on a fresher track, I don't run that much axle lead, and this base shouldn't have that much axle lead. I just probably didn't adjust it as I was doing it. Yeah, I just didn't adjust it because this one's still got 20 gallons of fuel and stuff like that. But that's why with this car, I would probably actually go to 2/16 or 1/16 on this track. Like that. That'd probably be about my starting point for my axle lead. Okay, so but yeah, that's why I do that. All right. So I tell you what, because we got like 40 minutes. So I tell you what I'm gonna do, you guys. You guys, first of all, you guys got any questions? Any other questions? All right, so this is what we're gonna do. For those of you guys who can actually do this, because I know some of you guys you might not be home or you might not be able to get to your computer, although it is Sunday. But I'll throw up. Front end pushes out towards the wall on exit. Yes, but you can also get rid of that red wagon by decreasing the left rear bite or the left rear dynamic wedge. It's why I changed a lot of the stuff in the setups. That's why I cannot reiterate this enough, you guys. I cannot reiterate this enough. Red wagon, you're not saying this, but it brings up a great point. The setups are dependent on you. How you drive the car. A setup does nothing but maximize your driving capability. That's what a setup does. I can take Tony Stewart, right? And I can take Kyle Larson, and I can throw them in the exact same dirt midget, and it'll have two different setups on it, and both of them will be fast because both of them drive different than one another. Because those setups are there to maximize each one of their driving capabilities. That's what a setup does. A good crew chief, that's what they do. They don't throw on a setup and say, hey, drive it. They don't do that. Right? It maximizes your driving skills. So if you like to take it out because you don't want the front end to push, go for it, man. If that's what feels good to you, do it. By all means, do it, right? Like, do not think that you have to do right, Hayden Cardwell, right? Hayden Cardwell runs, only 2 degrees of rear split, and he likes, 200 pounds of left rear bite. Great for Hayden Cardwell, right? It doesn't matter. His setup is not going to help you. It might be a starting point. It might give you ideas, right? But guess what? You ain't Hayden Cardwell, just like I ain't. So me throwing on his setup ain't going to help me, right? Like it's just not. So you guys, I really want you to understand that. Okay? I really want you to understand that. There's no unicorn setup. There isn't. There really isn't, man. Especially with these cars. We can argue with the wing sprint cars that there might be some kind of exploit out there, right? That might give you a couple hundredths of a second or something like that. We can argue that fact, and I'm willing to have that conversation with all the testing I've done. But with all these other cars, there ain't. There just isn't. Because I've seen way too many different variations of setups. I've seen a lot of the pro guys' setups. Let me tell you, they're a lot more willing to share their other stuff because it's so different, you ain't going to be able to drive it. And these cars are no different, man. They're really not. So you guys really focus on what's comfortable for you, okay? That's really the thing. But here's what I'm going to do for you guys, all right? For those of you guys who can make it, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to put up an open practice session right now at Charlotte. I'm going to do just an hour because I do need to take a nap before I work my double shift tonight. But we'll go SSR. Big block test. I will throw this up and hell, I won't even put a password. I'll just leave it open. We'll start it now. I'll leave it open for 2 hours. I'm not going to be able to stay that long. But we'll literally just start this thing, open practice, 2 hours on a clean track. You guys can just run the hell out of it, okay? And you guys can come in with the big block modifieds and drive them and ask me questions, and I'll tell you how to, different adjustments and stuff like that. You guys can try them out. I'll just record it also, that way people who are going to watch this later can see different adjustments and try them and stuff like that. So if you guys want to do that, you guys can hop in here and join me, all right? Also, we'll just go the max. Screw it. We ain't doing cautions. We ain't racing. We just practicing. Okay. There we go. So this is going to be up here any second, you guys. There's 60 spots. There's 57 of you guys watching. So if every one of you guys shows up, you're good. Dustin, I only slept 3.5 hours last night, man. I was up at 2 o'clock this morning. So I need to take at least an hour and a half nap before I go to work today, because I got a double shift tonight. My commute is an hour and a half each way, and then I have a double shift in between. So it's a long day, and that drive home is really rough when it's like 2 o'clock in the morning, and I'm just like nodding off. It sucks, man. It really sucks. Especially now here in California, you know, with the new shutdowns and everything like that. Dude, it's so eerie. It's like something out of The Walking Dead, right? Just minus the zombies, where I'm like the only car on the road. You know, making sure I've got my note loaded that says I am an essential worker for Amazon, therefore I can be out past the curfew, because we got a curfew in this state. It's freaking ridiculous. So I gotta take a nap, man, because I might get sleepy on the way home. All right, where's this thing at? Oh, come on, show up. Yeah, when you stay up too late, man. There it is. It's up. NorCal? Yeah, I'm in Northern California. I'm in Northern California. The armpit of the U.S., as I like to call it. Because it literally looks like an armpit. Like, if you look at a map of the United States, you take California, the way that it kind of bends, it looks like the elbow. And then if you look at the valley, like, that's the armpit. Like, that's the way that it looks. Yeah, it's in hosted sessions, Scott. What do I do for a living? Union Millwright. I know what it's like to put... Oh, I work for Amazon. I work for Amazon. SSR has been awesome. It's been incredible. It has helped me. It literally helps me take care of my family, which is it's amazing that I get to do this. That I get to help people with something that they're passionate about, something that I'm passionate about, right? Sim racing. I get to do this and actually make money. Now, I don't get rich off of it by any means necessary, right? I mean, I'm nothing close. But the fact that I get to do it and I get something in return that actually provides for my family is incredible, right? It does enough to where I only need a part-time job at Amazon. You know, it is only part-time. So I do double shifts on Sundays and Mondays. Sundays and Mondays, and then Tuesdays and Fridays I have just single shifts. And then I'm off the other 3 days. So it gives me the opportunity to do this stuff, which is awesome. You know what I mean? It's awesome. So, alright, you guys. So basically, come out, run. This track's going to get slick, probably super fast. And then, yeah, just whatever. If you guys let me know how the car's doing, and I'll tell you how to adjust it. We'll do some trial and error stuff here right now on the spot. Alright? See how much of this stuff works. How much doesn't. Because like I said, I've tested a lot. Not everything, though. Might as well do some practice myself. I need it. Alright, I gotta get rid of that. I'm not doing the insider videos. I can turn that off. See, when the track's fresh, you can actually run these things wide open.
Go high.
Or you can hit the wall. Oh, come on. Ah. I'm trying. There we go. One thing I do want to try is this. I want to try more stagger. Less droop. And then more split? Or no, excuse me, less split. There we go. This is the only bad thing about these cars, though, is you make a couple adjustments and now you gotta like redo everything. Oh my god. think that this is one thing though that I do think that the see, look at that. I changed that stuff and now my casters are all off again. Let's try that too. Let's max these cameras out and see how it goes. Boom. -6 plus 8. Why not? Why not? Now, I don't recommend you guys do this. What I just did, where you go out and make a bunch of changes, don't do that, okay? Because you're gonna, if the car feels good, you're not gonna know what made it feel good. I have done enough testing to where I have an idea of what affects what, okay? So. See how much better the car drives now? See how we're not sliding up? I'm just wide open too. That is a huge improvement.
Go high.
Huge improvement. Now obviously we're on a fresh track.
Go slow down low. Got one stopped up high.
Oops, hit the mic there. Damn it. Hit my microphone. Sorry if that made a loud noise, you guys. Whoa, stop that. Okay. Let's see, lap times. Faster. 16.7. Let's see. Where's Dustin? There he is. He's 16.6. Stay off the fence, Dustin. Don't do what I do. I climb that fence at least once a lap. I do it all the time. Quite the turnout. Okay, so let me do this. Let's bring up the Motec. Let's bring up that last little couple laps that I ran there. Let's see how that looks. The heck? Oh, come on. That was when I was sitting in the pits. I was like, that doesn't make any sense. I need that one. There we go. See the... Look at how much closer. Look at that. Dynamic weight in the rear, almost even. Keep in mind. I've got 128 pounds of left rear bite. Okay, so that's really the thing I want you guys to think about. Remember when I was talking before, right? When I had that setup, it hardly had any left rear bite. And I was talking about how, and let me turn this down. I don't know if this is super loud for you guys, but I'm going to turn this down a little bit so you guys can still hear me. But remember when I was talking about how the car was just wanting to slide up, like it wasn't going forward, just sliding up. Well, putting on that more left rear bite, what happens is when we're in that transitional phase and the weight shifts dynamically, now it's even coming out. The best way to maximize your forward drive is, I don't care what car you're racing. It does not matter if you are in a Formula 1 car, a McLaren, right, a Lotus, or a big block modified. It doesn't matter. Anything and everything in between. The best drive that you can have is to have equal maximum drive to both rear tires. That's the best drive that you can have, right? On entry and middle, we can talk all day long about what's better to drive in on, the right rear or the more left rear or whatever, right? Because that's all about rotation and getting the car set. That entry, everything that you're doing on that entry is to get you set up to have the greatest drive out of the corner so you can maximize your speed and carry the most amount of momentum, whether you're at Eldora or Fairbury, doesn't matter. So when you can equalize the rear and do that on that drive out, that is good. That is really good. And you can see here, that's what we're doing. If I bring up the track, right, and we look at where we're at, right? So here we are. We go into the corner. Where's the weight at? We have 819 on the left rear, 788 on the right rear. So we're going into the corner. There is weight shifting, but not as much yet. We haven't fully rotated and had that weight transfer. Then what happens? You can see where the weight starts to move up, right? We roll to the right. Get the car set. Remember, I'm wide open on the throttle, not lifting. And then as we come to the exit and then we start to drive out of the corner, you can see that's where it gets nice and tight and it's very, very even, right? That's what we want to see. That's really, really good. And maintaining that must be where I hit the wall. Whoops. Is what we want to see. Right there's where I messed up and hit the wall. We don't need to look at that line. All right. So more left rear bite gave us what? In more equal drive coming out of the corner. That's really, really good. Also, you can look at our fronts. Our front weight is a lot more even than it was before as well. When we look at the suspension, right? Way, way different than what we had before. And then finally, if we look at let's look at the traction numbers here. So traction on these things, pretty good. Not great, but pretty good. And I've got a lot more testing I'm about to do with these things, obviously, to see. But our traction efficiency based off of and I don't have the wheel, I didn't do the wheel diameters. I forgot to do that. So that's the theoretical speed's not going to be 100% correct because it's got the late model wheel diameters in there, and I'm pretty sure they're different. But if we look at the traction efficiency based off of wheel slip, that's really good because we're not spinning the crap out of the tires. Keep in mind, it's also still a pretty fresh track, but pretty good numbers to start with. I'm actually pretty happy with that. And look, all I did was I increased stagger. That was good. That helped. And I had more left rear bite than what initially it started with, right? Softened that right rear spring, stiffened the left rear spring. Did my shocks way that I wanted, right? And there you go. Took some droop out, and now we're set. I'm going to save this right here as the new baseline because this felt way better. Way better. All right, let me bring up the stream here, see what we got here. The armpit is... Who's the Dustin Griffiths guy here? He likes to hit the fence a lot. He's a pro and he's awesome. That's who he is. That's who he is. Am I sharing the base setup? Yeah, I'll be sharing it. I'll post it in the Discord. You can get it in the Discord. It'll be with all the other free setups. Dustin says he picked up a 1/10 and a half, maxing out the left rear bite with the ride height. So there you go. Oh, yes, Scott. Dynamic load is something that I created. Yes, I'm sorry. It doesn't come with Motec. Most of the stuff that you guys see in my Motec book is stuff that I created. I'm sorry. Yeah, it's Ryan Billy. It's Motec. Yeah, it's Motec, and like I said, that I built most of it, and I've had a lot of people hit me up about that Motec book. A lot of people, all the Motec books. I'm sorry, you guys. Right now, they're not available. They just aren't. I wish one day they will be. They're just not right now. So. Yeah, Dustin, you're right. You are right. For those of you guys who have ever driven a non-wing, sorry, you guys, my neck and my back have been killing me for weeks now. Been popping Tylenol like Pez. When you drive these things, it's really like a non-wing. It is. The concepts of it. It doesn't feel exactly like a non-wing. It feels different, but the concepts of it are very similar in terms of the throttle and how you set the car and stuff like that.
Shark.
Oh yeah, Scott, you guys are gonna. Road to Pro members are gonna get it. You guys are gonna get the book. So I was giving it to you. I'm giving it to you guys. Bunch of people in here. So let's do this. Dustin said he actually increased his speed by maxing out the left rear by using the ride heights. So I'm gonna max it out right now. Gonna save that. Oops, I guess I should pass tech before I save something, huh? There we go. Make sure I pass tech. Yep. Are we good? Yes. Alright, you guys, I just shared that baseline setup with you here in the garage. It made some adjustments to it and was able to save some time on the lap, so you guys can try it out if you want. Alright, let's turn some more laps here and see. Gotta make sure I don't pull out in front of somebody. Oh man, the track slicked off quick. Yeah, this actually feels really, really good. I'm gonna hit the tire. Dang it. Hold on, I gotta go back because all I did was hit that tire and somehow... Do we have a new damage model on this car too? Oh no, that's not new. That can't be new. Did the whole axle fall out of my car? Huh. Oh yeah, the whole axle fell out. Huh. Wow, I screwed that thing all up. Hey, they did a good job on the side panels. Like that. Alright. One day I'll figure out the setups. Yeah, you will, man. You'll get them. So, you'll definitely get them. But hey, what's up, Tim? So yeah, you guys, that's pretty much everything, man, that I have found. So someone was saying that if they add more fuel, right, what happens is now you've got too much left rear bite. So what you want to do, all right, and you guys, you always want to do this on basically every car that you drive, okay? When you have something that feels good in terms of a base, what you want to do is make note of what you've got going on, especially with the ride heights and the corner weights, okay? So as this changes, and keep in mind, when you change the rears, it's going to affect the fronts. So we have 882, 733, okay, fine. More importantly, 5.96, 6.5. So if I add a gallon, right, what'd that do? Well, that just changed it. That actually lowered the right, okay? It lowered the left, but it lowered the right more, which is why the left rear bite increased. So you want to actually increase that, add a couple gallons, and now you're good, right? Just a click or two, and you're good to go. And I really think 10 gallons is probably going to be enough. If they're running 30 lap features, I think 10 gallons is going to be good. I really do. Whoa.
Have a slow car on the bottom.
Got cars everywhere. It's carnage out here. All right, now that the track's starting to slick off some, we can do a couple little tests here on the slick track and see how the car feels before we wrap up and call it a day. And I gotta tell you, the setup actually feels pretty good in terms of the track, even though it's slicked off now. Now it is a little bit more unstable. See how we're bouncing around?
Got a slow car up ahead. Got a slow car up ahead. Have a slow car on the bottom. Inside.
So, what I'm thinking is, for Charlotte in particular, as this track gets so bumpy,
Too wide there. Clear low, clear low.
especially running up on that cushion. Whoa!
Slow car ahead. Go low, go low. You got one inside. All clear, all clear. Go low.
Gotta get off the track here. So what I'm thinking is that we need to, and I thought, did somebody send me a message? I didn't see it. I think somebody did and I didn't see it. Hold on. Oh yeah, car doesn't want to dig in to bite, just slides. Is this me? Oh. So someone was saying that their car feels like it's not wanting to dig in on the right, it's just wanting to slide. And then they asked, "Is this me?" That could be the driver. It could be. Like I was just using the setup. The car felt like it was rolling in for me, so it could be the driver. But it also could be the setup for their driving style, right? Remember, I talk about this all the time. So one of the things that you would do in that situation, if you got a car and it doesn't feel like it's really digging in on the side, soften that right rear spring. Soften the right rear spring. You're going to have to also reset the ride heights in the back because it's going to definitely change the corner weights. But soften that right rear spring, and that should help that car dig in a little bit more, okay? So that's something that you can do. But I'm going to do some changes right now. So we've got the feature fuel in there. 50 laps would be like 12 gallons. Yeah. I saw 50 to 75 laps in the schedule. Really? They're really running that kind of race? Hold on, I gotta look at this schedule real quick. Where's the schedule here? Let's bring this up. like the 70s, I think. There we go. So the 358 modifieds. Oh, that's... Wait, what is that? iRacing 358 Modified Series. Dirt UMP. Is that a new class? Must be a new class. Anyways, okay, C class, here we go. So USAC, Street Stocks, World of Outlaws, Midgets, Prolates, Big Block Modifieds, here we go. Oh yeah! Oh yeah, they are. Yeah, you guys, I just looked at the schedule. They're running 50, 60, and 75 lap features for these big block mods. So get used to driving them with a lot more fuel. But even then, if we look at my fuel calculator here, right, the max, which would bring up a calculator, yeah, 0.33. If we did, so Charlotte was what, 50 laps? Charlotte, 50 laps. Times 50. That's 16.5 gallons. It ain't 20. Now, I do wonder. There's no heat races. That's why. There's no heat races with them. Well, that kind of sucks. Big block mods run heat races in real life, don't they? That kind of blows, man. I'll just have to start my own league, like I've done with everything else. Big block mod league coming in the NARC. Stay tuned, because I don't know when. Okay, let's get that out the way. So, back to the setup here. One of the things that we can try doing here, as the track gets slick, just basically soften up all the springs. Soften them all up. We got to reset that. Boom. We're going to need to raise that. Boom. All right. And actually, I think I could probably go down maybe a little bit more on the gear, a little taller gear. Maybe lighten that up some on that shock. And now that we've got it kind of slicked off, we can do a little bit more on the droop chain. And there we go. Let's try that. Let's see how it feels now. Because, yeah, this track is definitely getting slick. That really sucks that they're not doing heat races, man. That's what dirt track racing is. That's what it is. Right? Have you ever gone to a dirt track and shown up and they're like, oh man, good news tonight for the sprint cars. They're going to qualify and run a feature. And you'd be like, wait, what is this, NASCAR? Like, I thought we run heat races and consolations. What the hell is this? Oh, no, we've changed the format. We got a new one. It's awesome. No, it's not. That sucks. I can get off the wall there. Yeah, this actually feels pretty good. Oh! I think that was Dustin I just hit. Dustin, I'm sorry. Sorry, man, I tried to avoid you.
Inside. Clear low. Clear
No,
low.
you're good.
Yeah, one inside. Slow car down low. Slow car up high.
I gotta say, this actually feels pretty good, even in the slick.
Yeah, one stopped up high. Yeah, one outside. All clear, all clear.
Yeah,
one
I
outside.
gotta tell you, that felt really good, just softening up those springs like that. That made a huge difference in terms of the bumps and then also the cornering. So just going 25 pounds lighter on the springs from the base setup will definitely help. Now, you guys keep in mind also, please, this is for a big track. If you're at like a Fairbury, you might want to keep more right rear spring to help the car rotate around that corner more since it's a lot tighter, right? Those are all things you have to keep in mind. Like I said, this is Charlotte. I will be putting out setups, like I said, throughout the season. So, no, Doug, they don't race big blocks out here. I'd never even seen a big block before. I'm watching you on the phone, and I'm in the test session. Awesome, Chad. I like it, man. Possessed Fajita. That is an awesome name. I assume it's going to be a lower class race, kind of like how 305 Sprint skip heat. Yeah, but this is a C class there, Fajita. Like, this is in the C class. Now, they used to do this with the UMP mods, and it sucked. That was the reason why I didn't really race them. I didn't like doing that. I like racing heat races, because that's how dirt racing is supposed to be. If I didn't want to do heats, I'd go race NASCAR. Right? Like, I'd go do that. But they ended up bringing that to the UMPs. So I don't know if they're going to plan on doing that with these in the future. But the fact is that right now, we ain't got heat races. But could be me not used to the big block I ran a small block. Oh, yeah, yeah, that's right. So, I mean, we're starting a late model league, or a late model season. It'll be our first late model season in January when we start the new season. Like, I'm seriously tempted now to just do big block mods. I really am. But, no, can't do that. All right. Well, all right, you guys. You guys got any more questions about this setup stuff before I go? And you guys, like I always say, and most of you guys already are, if you're not in the Discord, join the Discord. Because you can get all this stuff in there. I will be I will be putting out setups and stuff like that for these cars throughout the season. So that way you can have access to those. They will be free. They're not going to be. Oh yeah, dude. Yeah, you can play with my setup as much as you want. They're not going to be as dialed in as, like I said, the insider stuff, but they'll be better than the iRacing stuff, which is the main thing, looking for an improvement. So, but yeah, so you guys, that's going to do it. Thank you guys very much. I hope you guys enjoyed this. I hope it helped you and kind of shed some light on stuff. I hope it was entertaining. I know I kind of ramble sometimes, forgive me for that. But hopefully this helped you. That's the main thing. But anyways, you guys, that'll do it. As always, thank you guys very, very much for joining me. And until next time, I want to wish you guys all good luck and good racing. Take care.